That's why I believe in you, because that is the greatest purpose. It's to love. Honest. It sounds corny, whatever you want to say. I don't care. I love people because there is freedom and power in loving people.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality, and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the one who will be here with you each and every Wednesday, interviewing a different consciousness changemaker that is also out there working tirelessly to help catalyze change and expand awareness all across Spaceship Earth. On the other 4 weekdays, you can hear me discussing topics such as my favorite thought-provoking quotes, reading and discussing wisdom from empowering books, playing clips from various inspirational spiritual teachers, sharing a bit of mysterious news, taking questions from the audience, and essentially digging into any other mind-expansive topics that will help keep your soul fed by tuning you into positive vibrations on a consistent basis. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on the show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's interview episode, I'm super excited to have Mr. Authenticity himself, Mark Shapiro, here with me on the show. Mark is the host of the One and Only podcast, which is always getting to the bottom of one of the most important questions a person can ponder. Are you being real? Hey there, Mark. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's I'm thrilled to be here, and I got to say, being called Mr. Authenticity, those are tough shoes to fill.
Yeah, no pressure, no pressure.
I'm definitely human, and I see authenticity as a practice. And there are times when I get super real, and I'm willing to go there, both with myself and with others. And then there's other times, especially in interpersonal relationships, where it can be more challenging.
Absolutely. I always say on the show, and of course, because I'm doing this 5 days a week and talking about all these spiritual concepts and vibration and getting things right. And so I'm always throwing out the disclaimer constantly. Hey, guys, I'm doing this first and foremost for myself. We teach best what we most need to learn, right? And so if you benefit, great. But I have to learn this stuff. And this is the best way for me to just like burn it into my brain. I'm a slow learner, so I do it a lot.
I really appreciate your humility in saying that. We could all argue that everything that we do is selfish, that we get something personally out of everything, even if we're giving and supporting somebody else, it could make us feel good. So I can certainly,
there are no selfless acts.
I can certainly relate to that as well. And I'm sure we'll go deeper into my story, what led me to having a podcast about authenticity and areyoubeingroreal.com and stuff. But if I didn't do this as a full-time job, I would not be nearly as effective at being me.
Yep, exactly.
It's an ongoing practice.
Yeah, it's a daily conscious effort, as I often say. And an old girlfriend of mine said that many years ago, and I'm just like, okay, I love that. I'm keeping it, and so I constantly say it's a daily conscious effort to get this stuff right. When you're committed to self growth, that's where it goes. But okay, so I want to start at the very first question I ask everyone. You and I obviously are going to have plenty to talk about. We dove right in. Usually, I start off with the same question and end with the same question. You're in an elevator. You're in an elevator. You got 10 floors to answer. The girl next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" What do you say?
My passion is giving and supporting people. I find that this world it's very challenging to be ourselves with so much noise. And I love being a reflection, acknowledging people, seeing people, and giving any kind of hand to support them in being whoever they want to be.
Lovely. Yeah. Once again, it's like funny. You've hit on so many things that I constantly talk about. Like in the first 2 minutes of this, I'm always saying, hey, it's all reflections. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself, and to be that reflection that is sort of reflecting back the most potential perhaps that each person has. That's what I strive to be. Maybe I fall short sometimes. Sometimes I reflect back maybe the angry a-hole with my brother or something like that. But for the most part, it's like being that positive reflection in someone's life. There's nothing more rewarding, right?
Yes, fully. And I've always been an encouraging person, but I never realized how much of a gift it was until the last couple of years. Yeah.
And let's talk a little about that. Your story,
Sure.
You have a pretty interesting story, what led you to doing what you're doing. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Well, I'll say first and foremost that I've lived a pretty fortunate life. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, had a wonderful family that was encouraging, and we went on vacations, and I was able to go to college. I went to Emory University in Atlanta, and I had everything going for me. With that said, I always wanted to be liked and wanted to fit in. And that was so important to me. And I also had an older brother that I've just been doing a lot of deep work recently and realizing really how deep this actually goes. But my older brother, amazing role model, he taught me everything as a young kid. And oftentimes he'd jump out in front of me and take the spotlight and show me how it was done. And while that taught me a lot of things and taught me how to perform, and he taught me social skills at the same time, it gave me a cushion to hide behind, because my brother was always there to rescue me. And that I adopted a mindset that I would always be second best. And this was something subconscious, or a decision I probably made when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And that was really showing up throughout my teens and throughout my 20s. So I was so obsessed with getting it right and fitting in and just staying in line and living the life that I was supposed to lead, or following the path versus really creating my own path and truly believing in myself that I could create anything that I want. So fast forward, I graduate from college. I get a good job at Showtime Networks, the TV channel, right out of college. Actually, I started out as an intern after my junior year of college, and then went full-time after my senior year. And I stayed at Showtime for 12 years. And it was a great job. I learned so much. It was a 6-figure gig. I had a marketing budget that was north of $15 million a year. Worked on the biggest account in the company. Yet at the same time, I was unfulfilled. I was unfulfilled. I was just doing kind of what I thought was expected of me. And while that might have sounded great on paper, when I'd go out and meet people and I tell them I worked for Showtime, I wasn't very excited to share that with people. And it's because I wasn't really living my truth. I was doing what was expected of me. And I felt like I was pretty average. And I think that goes back to that second place mentality that I had since my youth, in that I know I'm effective. Second place isn't last place. Like it's still, it's still pretty solid, but there was a wall or a ceiling that I put up between me and my highest potential, because I was always going to be second best, which is pretty much second best at being Mark Shapiro as well, which is really not living up to my potential. So there was essentially a huge earthquake in my life, and it wasn't a physical earthquake, but it was when my 11-year romantic relationship ended 4 years ago, and I got a divorce that really, 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 really rocked my world.
Wow.
I thought that we were going to be together forever. I mean, we'd made that commitment to one another. We were married, and my life felt really good. It felt certainly good enough. Now, if I could do anything in the whole world, would I have chosen selling Showtime subscriptions? No, absolutely not. But once again, on paper, 6-figure job, had a nice home that I'd come home to every single day, and I just watch TV every single night.
Right.
But what I didn't realize at the time was how my creativity was decreasing and diminishing by the day. And
selling your soul, right?
I felt like my box was shrinking. And I didn't even know that I wanted something different or that there was really something else out there. I just figured, this is my truth. This is my reality. Other opportunities are going to come in the future. For example, I wanted to increase the size of my real estate portfolio. I'm like, oh, that will happen in time. There'll be opportunities that come to me. Other professional opportunities will land in my lap, or I just can't see them right now. But there wasn't a big proactive approach to go out and to create or to look more deeply within as to what my true calling was. I was just so focused on more surface level stuff and fitting in and subscribing to all of the noise that was everywhere.
Wow.
I think it's pretty funny. Now, I'm not hating necessarily on pop culture and like celebrity news and stuff. If anyone's out there is listening who likes that kind of stuff, hey, kudos, all the power to you. But I used to be obsessed with that stuff. And then when I started working on myself, like now I could not care less about that kind of thing. I actually used to be a big sports fan. Yeah. Now I could care less about sports. For me, it's all about taking an active role in my life. Yep. And part of the reason why I don't care about sports is there's just so many other things that I'd rather do with my time than watch somebody else live their life.
That's exactly what I just had this conversation with someone a couple days ago, and it's someone was asking about sports, and I was like, as a kid, I played sports, a lot of sports. I loved them. I watched them. I was really into it, and as I got older, and as I sort of started doing self work, and also just what you just said. It's like I can either sort of watch someone else's dream unfolding all day, every day, and make that I'll live vicariously through them with the hat and the shirt. And no offense to anyone out there, like you said, to anyone who's really into sports, but this is just sort of what I came to as well. It's like I'd rather spend my time, instead of selling other people on Showtime, being in Showtime, right? Making my own
exactly.
And sort of, and anyone can do it. It's like we've all got the potential, and of course we all have unique paths. It doesn't mean we've got to become huge celebrities or stars ourselves or anything like that, but just doing something that is authentic to you and is sort of fulfilling that need to find your highest purpose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to throw it out there for those that do like sports or pop culture news, my invitation for you, if you're not already doing it, if you're already doing this, mad kudos to you, but looking at the learning in sports, whether in the teamwork or the positive head that a quarterback has and brings to his team, or to pop culture, anything that you could take away to fuel your own creativity, then to me that it does have a self-serving element versus just being like looking at the fire and just getting lost in this kind of meditative nonsense.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree with that, and definitely know where you're coming from. And I can also relate a little bit to your story on the other side. I think I have a brother who's 2 years younger than me, and I was always, very, I've always been very outspoken and so forth. And I think he had to go through a lot of what you went through, which is sort of finding his own identity, having, an older brother who was so, and especially back then, you add all this fire and sort of energy to some immaturity, and it's not always the nicest older brother. So it's, and I would say, it's one of those things, and I always dig into sort of the bigger picture. It's like it made you who you are. And I would say there's actually soul contract there. You set that up intentionally so you could have the purpose of overcoming, that sort of limitation maybe, or if limitation's the right word, just having that figure is by design, right? And it's made you exactly who you are, and you're someone who wouldn't be what you are today without it.
For sure. I would totally agree that narrative has definitely created the path that I'm living. Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about your show here. How long have you been doing it? How long has the one and only podcast? And talk a little bit about the premise of the show and so forth.
Yeah, sure. So the premise of the show, there are 7 billion people in this world, as we all know, and there's only one of each of us. And while that might be the obvious thing in the world, it's great perspective to remember that we each are a beautiful gift. We're each a puzzle piece that is essential for the whole. And like I said, it's so easy to get lost in the noise. It's a natural human characteristic to want to fit into a tribe and feel value or feel worth. And oftentimes the way that we go about it is by conforming, when the reality is there's only one of each of us. And it's our job to be ourselves. That's when we're going to actually be the most creative and provide the most value. Right. So that's the premise of the one and only podcast. And the show is really a deep dive into personal philosophy and vulnerability. So it's celebrating the fact that most of the episodes are interviews with inspiring people. So each person is the one and only. So I'll ask them how they see the world. I'll ask them what they think about most, what they're most afraid of, when they feel most vulnerable, when it's most challenging to be authentic. And I love to ask the most challenging questions that I possibly can. Yeah.
Wow, that's
the podcast.
That's an intriguing. I know people hear that, and just from hearing that description, you're going to get a bunch of new listeners, because that's what people want. People are tired of the surface, the photoshopped pictures and the facade, which of course you've probably heard and seen where people are talking about how it's created like more depression. Facebook and Instagram and these things that are sort of creating people only showing the best possible picture at the best possible time, and then it makes you feel like, why is my life so boring or what have you? And it's just it's not really that authentic. And the fact that you're digging into that, I applaud you for that. I feel like vulnerability,
Thanks, Brandon.
Vulnerability, authenticity, these things are like, thank goodness I feel like they're becoming in vogue, so to speak. Like people are starting to say, hey, I'm tired of everything else. Well, let's get to what's real. And, it's just incredible. And you said, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's a few things you evoked all these things within me. So a few things I want to share real quick.
Yeah, please.
The first is, I do agree with you. I think there's more people than ever before that are fed up with surface level stuff and want to go deeper. And then there's a lot of other people that this is the new normal, social media and short attention spans and, all you can eat on your phone and addiction to phone. So that's a huge issue that I think is only going to get worse. With that said, I think that there are so many people out there that are fed up with it. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this show, you're tuning into a positive, self-reflective, spiritual show versus probably just being on your phone right now, getting lost in social media updates.
It's a little different than the Kardashians, just slightly.
Yes, it's a little bit different. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's one thing to be talking about authenticity, and it's another thing to actually be authentic and be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
I find there's a lot of people that are very quick to say, oh, yep, I'm totally authentic. I always speak my mind, and actually sometimes it gets me in trouble.
All right.
And then there's other people who, like myself and like what you said, that it's an ongoing practice, and sometimes it's challenging. It's not a black and white thing. You're either authentic or you're not authentic. And then, at least that's from my understanding and my practice. And then there's people who are just not in the conversation at all. And you know what? That's cool too. Yeah. The third thing I wanted to share is, you were talking about the pictures that we choose to share on social media, and so many people out there that we're friends with are just showing the highlight reel of their life, gloating, the braggadocious posts, or other people who are crying out for help.
Right.
So, where's the kind of like just the honest, real, authentic
Here's
posting.
Here's me taking my trash cans to the curb on Tuesday morning.
Right. And then there's a point of oversharing as well.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It's like
I had a friend once who would do that.
Yeah.
He'd say, I'm taking the trash out now. Just to like be silly. It was kind of funny.
Right. I'm trying to think as to how that could help somebody else. And the only thing that I can think of is somebody else getting the reminder. Oh, okay, I need to take my trash out today. So I guess that actually could help someone.
Could be beneficial.
So maybe it's not such a bad post. But I made a post of a picture about 3 weeks ago that created kind of a tiff within my family.
Oh, really?
And it was an intimate family moment. My dad passed away about 3 months ago after a 17-year battle with Alzheimer's disease. So he was sick for a really long time, and it was definitely a when, not an if. And he lasted much longer than any one of us in my family would have expected by years. So I'll first throw that as a caveat out there. But in his last days, we stood as a family around the bed that he was in his full-time care facility, and we were holding hands and just being loving to one another and sending my dad love and healing. And someone in the room took a picture of this beautiful family moment.
Right.
And about 3 weeks ago, so this was about 10 weeks after my dad's passing, I chose to post this picture on my social media because I felt like it could help and inspire other people. And honestly, for selfish reasons, it was a moment I was really proud of. I was really proud that my family stuck together. And I thought maybe it could help some other people. So I shared the picture, and my brother and sister were pissed.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, they were pissed. My mom was absolutely thrilled. My mom was my dad's caregiver for like 17 years. And all of the love that she received in the comment section of this post just like warmed her heart.
Lit her up.
But my brother and sister were really, really mad at me for posting it and for not asking them for permission.
Wow.
And so this actually sparked a whole deeper thing. Part of it I'm not going to get into, which is just familial relationships and my relationship with my brother and sister.
It opened up a can of worms.
It did. It opened up a can of worms. That's not like the point of the story. We did have a beautiful discussion over Thanksgiving and are closer than ever and are communicating on a deeper level than ever before, which is something I've been wanting for a really, really long time. I didn't think it was going to be dropping this, picture bomb in Facebook that was going to be the catalyst to make that happen. But that was the case. But the part of the story that does connect to the rest of the story here is I asked my brother and sister this hypothetical question where I said, based on the results and the warm response of people who saw this picture, I got hundreds and hundreds of likes and comments across Instagram and Facebook, and people more so than just like nice picture, your family is beautiful. People took the time to really pour out into the comment section the impact the picture had on them. And my gastroenterologist, who I haven't seen in a number of years, who I don't correspond with at all, sent me a message on the way to his own dad's memorial to thank me for sharing the picture and how that supported him in that difficult and challenging moment in his life.
Wow.
So I said to my brother and sister, like, based on these kind of things, my question for you is, had I asked for permission and you said no, and we decided as a family not to share this picture, would we have been doing a disservice in some kind of way to others?
Sure.
And the reason I ask is, given the state of the world, I mean, example A, Donald Trump is going to be our new president.
Right.
It's at least food for thought as to what we're willing to share individually and collectively as a society.
Did he feel, after you sort of painted that picture, did it help him to sort of, overcome his anger?
Great question. Both my siblings said at that moment, I mean, it was very hot. It was the day that the picture was posted.
Right.
They both said they still would have said, no, don't post the picture.
Gotcha.
Since then, the picture's still up. They haven't asked me to take it down since that day. So I think we're through it.
Yeah. Good.
But it did spark me to start a social experiment.
Oh, really? And what is that?
It did. Yeah. Well, so I had that thing where I'm like, there's so many things that we're not willing to share, or we don't even think of sharing with others, that could help other people. So it sparked this social experiment, which I'm calling Giving Confessions, which invites people to share something that they're perhaps embarrassed to admit, or something like a life hack that they have that they just don't talk about publicly, but that they're going to share it anyways because it could help someone. And I'm having people submit things in 30 or 40-second video clips. And I'm really excited to see what we create and the impact it has in people's lives.
Beautiful. I love that idea. It's like giving people the opportunity to be vulnerable, right? And see how empowering it is. Because, anytime I've been vulnerable on the show, and I strive to do that when it's, not contrived and authentic and all those things, it's like, you get so many people that it will resonate with, and that it's really helping. And it does take some bravery, right, to put yourself out there in that way.
It does. Yeah. I like to, it's like a muscle. I've got this 8-week mastermind program called Winning Weeks. And one person in the program, she's a beautiful person. She really, really struggles with asking for support and vulnerability. And this week, she was hooking up with a man, and they had like a beautiful 24-hour period. And after the 24 hours, she chose to get vulnerable and, ask him what this is to him. And he opened up and said that he has an It's Complicated type relationship in New York where he lives. She lived in LA, where he's got some kind of live-in girl that they're not in an exclusive relationship, but it's complicated.
Right.
And it broke her heart. It hurt her so bad. And so first, I acknowledged her for having the courage to ask that question, to get vulnerable, because that's something that she was challenged with. So I'm like, you found this out after 24 hours versus 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month. So kudos. I acknowledge you for doing that. But it also opens up the door to get real with one another faster.
Yeah.
To get through some of the surface level stuff, to really see what's real, and then to be able to choose either that aligns with my truth and what I want or not. And either way is totally okay. And so I acknowledged her, and I just said, like, it's not, I can just see in the way that you're explaining it how challenging it was, to bring this up to this man, as well as how challenging it was even for her to bring it up on this mastermind call. And I'm like, it's beautiful. I'm thrilled you did. Keep having the courage to get vulnerable and speak up, because it's like a muscle, and you got to strengthen that muscle, and it'll get easier and easier and easier. And I say this, Brandon, because I have been learning this from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
I also find that interpersonal relationships is when it's most challenging for me to be authentic, when I'm communicating my truth, in particular, my feelings about another person. And so it can be in terms of romantic relationships. It can be in a conversation with someone I'm doing business with about money, where it's just like really uncomfortable to have those conversations.
Yeah.
But the more that we have those conversations, the more we press into it, the more we practice, the easier it becomes and the more powerful we become at having those conversations. So I encourage everyone just to lean a little bit further in wherever you are at with your authentic communication. Whether you're a total pro or kind of a novice in this department, there's always room for growth and greater effectiveness.
Beautiful. Well said. Now, you mentioned your mastermind program. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, sure. It's called Winning Weeks. And it's funny. I know you had asked me a little bit to think about synchronicities before this call. And that definitely came out of a sequence of synchronistic moments where I started this mastermind program, which was something I'm like, I'll launch some kind of mastermind program at some point in the future, but I was scared and didn't know how I'd get there. But anyways, it's an 8-week program for high achievers, people who are committed to taking on their lives, living courageously, and supporting one another. So people set goals for 8 weeks across all areas of their lives, professionally, in terms of romantic relationships, familial relationships, social relationships, leisure in terms of contribution and giving, health. And then we support each other in accomplishing these goals together with having personal and spiritual breakthroughs.
Beautiful.
So it's a really exceptional program. And I've kind of outdone myself with it because when I launched it, I didn't know who the target was going to be. I didn't know it was going to be for such high achievers. And I also just didn't know if it would work.
Right.
So it's been a beautiful success. And I mean, I'm in awe of it. Someone in the program just reunited their parents for Thanksgiving after 38 years.
Oh,
apart.
wow.
And the three of them had Thanksgiving together as a result of her coming up with the idea and having the courage to make it happen. And then just holding strong during it, because it wasn't, the family dynamic was completely shattered. So once she was actually there in the space, it also took courage for her to hold the space then for the three of them to have and share a special bonding moment.
Wow, that's beautiful.
So that's kind of Winning Weeks in a nutshell. And it goes back to what I was saying in terms of the 30-second elevator thing, that this life is hard. We all know that. Life can be really challenging. There's going to be moments when things don't go our way or when we get in our own way. And I think it's just so important to have a team and to have incredible support around you. And Brandon, I say this personally because I look at my track record, and if I wasn't surrounded by so much encouragement and support and by other inspired and inspiring people, there's no way I'd be doing what I'm currently doing or be the man that I currently am.
Yeah.
It really takes a village. And oftentimes I'd find that I'd have like a great lunch meeting with someone and I'd come up with a couple of ideas, but after that lunch meeting, that person was gone. And then it was me with the ideas and my insecurities and my fears and doubts. Yeah. And that would oftentimes slow me down. And maybe I wouldn't actually create the idea or launch a product or whatnot. And I find that by having people that you can check in with on an ongoing basis that holds you accountable, that's the way of the future.
Yeah.
Just unparalleled levels of support. And sometimes that's love encouragement, and sometimes that's tough love and feedback.
Yeah. And it's so important to get connected with individuals who are on a similar path of self-growth and are working on sort of removing the ego piece, everybody's greatest obstacle, and being vulnerable, wanting to be supportive, understanding that if I help you, I'm helping an extension of self, that giving is where the ultimate joy in life comes from and success comes from. And it sounds like a program like you've put together is bringing all those elements together. Now, if someone wants to connect and get involved in that program, they do that through your website?
Yeah, it's on areyoubingreal.com or winningweeks.com. And whether this is the program for you or not, I just encourage you to link up with your friends, your family, those you love, and create greater levels of support.
Yeah.
It's just an absolute game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you talk, of course, a lot about, being authentic goes hand in hand with finding your true purpose, and of course, doing something that makes you makes you do something every day that makes you uncomfortable, right? And of course, quitting a six-figure job and pursuing these passions that you have, and that's very inspirational, I think, to a lot of people. What would you recommend to people out there who are sort of on the front end of this, are still at that job, coming home watching TV every night, and want to do more, want to get in the game, so to speak? To reference our sports talk, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd say awesome. You're in a beautiful place, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now.
Right.
And tomorrow you can be in a different place if you want to be. And to me, that starts with, Brandon, exactly what you were saying, getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So if you do the same thing over and over again, new opportunities are going to come to you at a much slower rate than when you're putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. You're opening yourself up to a world of possibilities.
Yeah.
And there's a compounding ripple effect when you do that, because you're opening yourself up to a new opportunity when you take a risk, and that opens up the door to a whole new world of additional opportunities. So I definitely encourage everyone, if there's something that you really want to do, you know you should do, but you've been avoiding or resisting, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
So whatever you're thinking about right now, yeah, that's it. And take a step in that direction today.
Yeah.
Or if not today, this week. Give yourself a deadline as to when you're going to do that. Now, you don't have to eat the whole cake at one time in one bite.
Right.
You know, take a baby step and then take another step and then take another step, because you can only currently see what you can see from your current perspective. Right. And when you take a step, you'll be able to see some additional things. And then as you continue to take steps, you open up this world of possibilities.
Yeah, I think of a Terrence McKenna quote that a listener shared. It was actually in comic strip form a few months ago, a friend and listener. And I just love it. So I come back to it again and again, and I feel like it's appropriate, so I'll read it off. Terrence said...
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear it.
Terrence said, nature loves courage. You make the commitment and nature will respond to the commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, that is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a featherbed. Isn't that epic?
I love that. I love that featherbed.
So good. It's a good ending.
It really is. And it goes against just the normal, train of thought in that the featherbed is what we currently have.
Right.
When the reality is we're all living with our fears and regrets and wishes. So if you actually push through them and are courageous, that's where the true featherbed lives. I really love that.
And I think it's so important. I had a friend over not too long ago. Actually, I did an interview with her many months ago, and she's done some co-host episodes with me, Anita Wing Lee, and she brought over one of her friends, just someone random. They stopped by, and I was hanging out, and we got into this really interesting conversation with the friend, and I don't remember her name now, but she had a near-death experience a year or so prior where she was swimming a long distance. She was on vacation with family and trying to swim from the boat to this little island area, and during it, she started to drown, and she had this profound experience where she was sinking, and next thing she knows, she's unconscious, and then she's somewhere else, and there's a voice there, and it was saying to her, and it really just stuck with me because the voice was saying to her, well, it's your time to go. You've done everything you wanted to do, right? Almost in a prodding way. Like, you're content. You did it all. You pushed yourself to the limit, right? You're satisfied with the effort that you gave. And of course, she wasn't feeling that way. And next thing she knows, there's more to the story, more kind of epic experience that she had. And the next thing she knows, she's being lifted back up from under the water to the surface. And here she is to get her chance. And we don't want to get to that point and not get lifted back up and have a chance to really put ourselves out there and go for it all. And so that, I don't know, it just really stuck with me the way she even described it better than I, because of course it was her experience. But it was that voice, like, okay, you've done it all, right? You went for it all, right? You're content, and we want to get there and be able to say yes, we are content.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting the Positive Head podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on May 1st on the show Wisdom Teachings, host David Wilcock explores the scientific proof of ascension DNA activation, and how interplanetary climate change is made possible with nested spheres of energy emanating from the galaxy. I mean, it'd be pretty hard to be more up my alley, right? As you guys all constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Such an inspiring perspective. And of course, finding your purpose, finding a community, being vulnerable, removing ego, all of these things sort of go hand in hand. And now this kind of leads even to another thought that I wanted to hear from you. And it's one that, I always am sort of talking about the ultimate nature of reality and sort of the spiritual awakening that I feel is happening on this planet. And I know that your podcast is also under the category of spirituality. So curious on what you would have to say about what the heck's going on here. Not a loaded question or anything.
Yeah, I know, and I have no idea what's going on here. That's the truth of the matter. I have no idea what's going on here. What I do believe is that people are desperate for change, and that they don't even care what change looks like. They just want change. And that, to me, personally, is an invitation to step it up and to take on greater levels of responsibility, because I believe that I've created this. And it's taken me 30 years of my life to find my voice and to speak up. And perhaps because I didn't find my voice 5-10 years before, I, in some way, shape, or form, played into the fact that Donald Trump is our president. I know not individually, I can't put all the weight on my own back, but, there's a ripple effect that we all have, and that we're all much bigger than we think we are. And our actions have really, really big compounding impacts on others. So, I really believe that we're all responsible for the current state of the world. And with that lies the opportunity moving forward as to the part that we can play in shaping and creating this world that we ultimately want. So we're all connected. We're all responsible. So that's an invitation for everybody. What is your idea? What would you do to educate, inspire, and change the world? And if there is a message, if there's an idea that just really, really resonates from your heart and you're not already doing it, then put yourself out there. Take some action in terms of bringing that to life. And if you're already doing that, thank you so much.
Right.
What else can you do? How can you work smarter? How can you collaborate in new ways? How can you make a greater impact? I'm a firm believer in that. Also, I think that we're hiding a lot. And this goes back to that giving confession, social experiment, vulnerability challenge, in that there's so much that we're trying to hide to protect ourselves from the idea of being hurt, or that vulnerability is a weakness. And I look at all of us like icebergs, and what we're showing to the outside world, or maybe even what we're willing to look at within ourselves, is what lies above the water surface. Yet, how much of the iceberg is actually above the surface versus below, right? It's like 80-20 rule, or maybe like 85% below, 15% above. And I truly believe, if we were to lower the water level even just a little bit, we wouldn't have to share our deepest, darkest secrets per se, but if we were to lower the water levels just a little bit more, we'd see more of the picture of what's really going on in the world. We'll experience a greater sense of oneness, but we'll also be able to support each other because we know what people's challenges are. So I feel like that could go a long way in this interconnectivity in terms of a spiritual awakening that will unite us and hopefully lead us closer to this idea of world peace.
Well said. Very, very true. I definitely agree. And I think no matter what your sort of spiritual perspective is, when you start playing with the concept of oneness and sort of giving away what you want for yourself to someone else, I think the results will speak for themselves in sort of backing the concept that there is an interconnectivity beyond what's visible, on the surface.
I totally agree. And sometimes it's hard to see, but we feel it when it's there. And, I truly believe in the law of attraction. And when we're being love, that we're going to attract more love.
Right.
And sometimes if, we're out of alignment or having a tough day, it's harder to be that love. But if we can experience that resistance, and if we can forgive ourselves and be okay with it and get back into alignment, then we're going to attract the love again. But it really requires having the courage to feel, embrace, to take a look at that darkness.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a big one, is being willing to face your fears, the importance of going through the things that are sort of troubling. And I always say, what you find is that lump of coal is a diamond in disguise. There's some great gift on the other side of it. But if you're always running, it just stays this lump of coal weighing you down in your pocket, right? Sure.
Yeah. What are you afraid of right now, Brandon?
What am I afraid of right now? That's a great question. What am I afraid of? I suppose I'm afraid, some part of me is afraid of failure. I've always been so driven as a person and had such huge expectations of, from the time I was, could speak, my mother will tell you, is I'm going to, conquer the world. I'm going to be, very wealthy and successful and notable. And these, I've always had this sort of drive to make something of myself. So I suppose my fear would be not doing that. And what I found on my own path of self-discovery as I let go of the need, and it's a process, right? Especially when it's been a lifelong sort of building up, right? But as I let go of the need or expectation to be anything more than what I am now, the sort of irony of that is that's when things start unfolding. That's as I've gone down that path. That's when my podcast starts taking off, and things are really moving. And the less I need that external validation, the more I get it. And I find and I've had success, pretty interesting story in business in the last year where, I built this company from me, living on a friend's couch to 100 employees and getting a big, $30 million offer to be bought out. And 12 hours later, we lost 90% of our revenue and the deal blew up. And, and all those things that I thought would define me and needed to happen, now I've let go of. It's like, I don't need, would I like to have lots of material abundance to do all the things I want to do to help heal the world and so forth? Yes. Do I believe that I still will attract a lot of that and even more than past, close calls? Yes. But I no longer need it. And or maybe not as much as I once did. It's a daily conscious effort. I'm still working on it, but I guess that's been my biggest fear, that I have been brave enough to sort of look in the eye and say, why? Because whenever you're validating yourself through these external things, if they're there, you're now, you feel good about yourself. If they're not, now your whole identity has poof and disappeared, right? And really, I believe that we are souls having a human experience, right? And you're so much greater and grander than any of those sort of stories of what you achieve, and that's been an ongoing thing for me to really confront, and I'm getting there, though. I feel like I'm proud of myself in the fact that I am getting there with it.
Brandon, thank you for the beautiful share.
Thank you for asking the question.
Yeah. I learned things about you in that share, and I think we can all relate to, your fears and what you're going through. And you have so much courage and a positive mindset. And I think that's where the magic is. That's what's supporting you and keeping this momentum.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I always say you take these stories. I believe we are, like you said, we're creating our lives. We're creating our reality. Law of attraction is a real phenomenon. And you can take a story like the one I shared, with my business that's happened within the last year. And I can say, man, all is lost. 1 in 10,000 entrepreneurs ever get to the level we were at. We're one of the 569th fastest growing company in the country just a little over a year ago. Boom, it's gone. It's like completely vanished, right? And it's like, oh no, I'll never do that again, or that's impossible. And I could tell that story and it would then be true, right? And instead I've decided to tell a story of, wow, that's just one little, hill on the roller coaster that is my life. And it's going to make the next chapter even greater and grander. But then, like I said, finding that healthy level of detachment. And if I'm wrong and if it doesn't, I'm still just as valuable as if I was on that couch 5 years ago, flat broke, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't define me.
Yep.
I am more than all of that. So
I totally relate with everything that you just said. That ties into my biggest fear right now, in that I feel like I've been ascending in the last 4 years since my divorce. And my fear is, well, what happens if I hit this cliff and I just go off the cliff and do a free fall?
Right.
I'm like, I'm not willing to do that. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you were just saying in terms of being in acceptance and having that positivity, in that if I do fall, that, maybe it'll just be 10 feet. It's not going to be falling all the way off a cliff to my death. Or
there will be a feather bed waiting for you.
Oh, wow. Boom. You go full circle on that one. Yeah. So it's the fear of getting out of the present moment that causes that anxiety, when the reality is what's kept me in this ascending state is by continuing to be gentle with myself, by continuing to have the courage to push through fears, to see additional possibilities for myself, to take off the ceiling of what I feel like I'm capable of doing and the impact that I can make, getting out of my own way to serve people. So all those things are big. And then the other piece of it that really resonated with me was control.
Yeah.
And my signature question, are you being real? I came up with it because it can be asked about anything. And it goes back to what I was saying before about a lot of times when I talk to people about what it means to be authentic, a lot of people are just quick to say yes or no, like black and white. So the are you being real question can be asked in a more granular fashion. Are you being real? Are you living a life that is really in sync with who you are, and you're not selling out on yourself, and that you're aware of the costs on yourself and other people when you're not being real.
Right.
Because we have a lot of value that we provide. And if we're not being real, it's not only going to affect us, but it's going to affect others.
What a great
point.
So
that's the granular kind of way that you can look at it. But you can actually ask that question about anything. Are you being real about the way you spend your time? Are you being real about the impact other people have on you? Are you being real with the words that you say? And the question that goes back to what you were sharing is, am I being real about the flow of life versus controlling it?
Right.
And I find that I've been just really attuned lately to the rhythm at which I'm operating at, because I have high ambitions for myself, growing my business, making a greater impact. And I want to do it so badly that I find myself forcing the rhythm a little bit. And when I do that,
I know that story.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And I'm not open to the magic and the synchronicity because I've got tunnel vision in a way, because my rhythm is off. So that really, am I being real about my rhythm and flow versus forcing things? That's really the question I'm asking myself. So I loved when you explained it, how you're just patient, and whatever life presents to you, it's, having the mindset that it's happening for you versus to you.
Yep.
And flowing with it to that feather bed.
Yeah. And I wish I could say I've always been patient. That's the funny thing about it, is I'm such a sort of I talk fast, I eat fast, I move fast. And life has just taught me and I'm still getting it, but it's slow down and relax. And when something is in the flow, it's going to feel really natural. You're going to see those synchronicities start appearing, and the magic really starts to sort of present itself that, hey, I'm on the right path here. This is the way it should be unfolding naturally when you're in the flow. And when you're trying to force life, it's can be very painful. It's like swimming upstream and getting, beat against the rocks, trying to swim the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
So
I guess in terms of go ahead.
You go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of flow, I mean, I never in a million years would have thought that I'd be in the line of work that I'm in.
Yeah.
That I'd have a podcast about authenticity. I never imagined or dreamed to do this at all.
Right.
I did dream to be able to produce content. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to come up with ideas for TV shows and movies and skits.
Right.
But I didn't have that more narrow lens or that core message or anything.
Right.
As to how I was going to do it. So it really was going with the flow of life, which came with that earthquake of getting divorced and having just utter heartbreak. It came with my dad having Alzheimer's and experiencing it for 17 years.
Right.
So it comes with, the light and the dark, the good and the bad. And fortunately, I've had the courage to flow with it, which, has resulted in me finding my purpose, or at least what my purpose is today.
Right.
Which is to practice my own authenticity and in turn, hopefully inspire a few people to do the same. And if not, that's okay.
Well, you definitely are. And, I think that's the biggest piece that someone can take away is, when you understand the bigger picture and that those things are happening for you, it helps to take the sting away. Not that the divorce isn't going to be devastating, not that having your father have Alzheimer's isn't going to be devastating, but when you're understanding, when you can look at it and say, okay, this really hurts, but how does it serve me, right? What is it leading me to the next greatest and grandest version of myself? How is it playing into that? Because that is the natural unfolding of the universe, and I am part of the universe, and this is what's must be. And when you take that perspective, I feel like it does help to ease the pain just ever so slightly so that you can make it to the next upswing, right? Because that's what happened. The pendulum swings. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely found with the divorce, not only did I have no momentum, I was questioning everything in my life. And everyone would tell me, oh, this is what was supposed to happen, and you're going to be better off, and you're going to be sitting with your own family at some point, and so thankful that this is the way that it worked out. Yeah. And while I knew that in theory, yes, that made sense. On a deep emotional level, I was not ready to accept that. And I'm still healing from that experience. I have not been in an exclusive committed relationship. Actually, I was in one for 4 months, but I haven't been in anything more longer than that in 4 years. Right. And while I feel ready today, I probably won't actually be in a committed exclusive relationship until I truly am ready. Right. So I've grown a lot, but that's been a really challenging thing for me to trust and love again. And at the same time, I had this beautiful opportunity to discover myself, to work on myself, to find my purpose. And, I'm committed to finding a beautiful, sustainable relationship and building a family when the time is right. Yeah. So that was kind of that one. Now, in terms of my dad's passing, I really viewed that as a rite of passage. So I let myself feel the grief and acceptance. And also you really looked at that as, all right, this is an opportunity for me to really be the man that I've always wanted to be, and to just continue to reach to new heights. This is something, I'm a self-development junkie. I love growth. Any opportunity for growth, I'm like, yeah, baby, bring it on, count me in. And that's really the way that I've looked at my dad's passing. And just seems like everything has been opening up for me in these last few months as a result of the positive mindset
and approach in the way that I'm looking at my dad's graduation from this physical life.
Right. And it's interesting. You know, my mother said something to me recently that really stuck. And she said, she was talking about her own parents no longer being here. My grandparents. And she said, once your parents are gone, you're no longer anyone's child. You know, you're no longer the kid. Right. And that is definitely a rite of passage. And it's something that really stuck with me. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm such, especially my mother is like such this doting kind of, super mom figure. So it's like, oh wow, the thought of not being her child one day or what have you is just, it's well, sad on one hand, of course, and on another it would be a new chapter. It's like, okay, now I'm no one's child anymore. I'm the adult, I'm the parent in the room. What? Like, so, yeah, definitely. And no surprise to me that as you make that transition with your father anyway, where it's now you're more of the man than you've ever been, it sounds like, right? And things are really happening for you.
I'm doing my best.
That's all we can do. Well, hey, you touched on something as we talked about being in the flow here and how synchronicity really opens up. As you know, I love stories of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal story, anything like that. I'm definitely a junkie for those stories. So you got something good for us?
Yes, I've got 3 little mini stories.
Oh, perfect.
I want to share.
What's better than 1? 3.
I know, Brad. I couldn't pick one. So
beautiful.
I'm going to go with 3.
You got it.
Yeah. So the first goes back 4 years, about 6 months after my divorce. A friend of mine, Jason Zone Fisher, encouraged me to check out this emotional intelligence workshop in Los Angeles called Mastery and Transformational Training, or MITT.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yes,
and
I have several friends that are involved.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I keep hearing this.
It completely changed my perspective and was really the catalyst for me to take responsibility for my life, to be proactive. I felt like I got my creativity back in this workshop. I really experienced people in a way that I realized that so many of my fears, insecurities, doubts, that I wasn't alone, that we all have our things. So that's a little bit of context. But I did this workshop and, I could have not ever done that workshop, right? Or I could have done that workshop at any other time. I mean, they do these workshops on a monthly basis, but I just so happened to do that workshop at the very same time that Lewis Howes, the host of the School of Greatness podcast, which is, I think one of the top 4 or 5 self-development podcasts on iTunes. And it's a phenomenal podcast. Lewis is absolutely amazing. So I happened to be in this training with him. And by becoming close friends with him, just that synchronicity of doing that transformational training at the same time as Lewis, building the relationship with Lewis, seeing him lead, seeing what he's done, the impact that he's made, seeing his podcast, that fueled me to create a similar path.
Cool.
So to me, that was a huge synchronistic moment, because had I done that workshop a month before or a month after, there's a very good shot that we wouldn't be having this conversation here today.
Right.
So that's the first thing. And like Lewis also, I mean, he's a huge inspiration. He's the one that challenged me to practice authenticity. So
beautiful.
Lewis is amazing. I love him. But the second one is in regards to a decision I made to go to a jazz bar one night about a year ago. So the quick context on that is, when I first launched my podcast, The One and Only, I needed a website, and the one and only podcast.com was too long. The one and only.com wasn't available. And my name is a pretty common name, Mark Shapiro.
Right.
So markshapiro.com wasn't available, and anything else in variation of that seemed kind of confusing. And so I came up with this idea just in a moment when I was launching the podcast back in first quarter of 2015, makeyourmarktoday.com. And I didn't do a lot of research about it. I just went with it. And a few months later, I realized that there was a makeyourmark.com. And not only was there a makeyourmark.com, which wasn't a surprise to me, but it was the home of the Make Your Mark podcast,
oh, funny.
Which also was about authenticity.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I went dark for a second in that moment, and I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Not only like I might have to completely change my website, but I could be subject to being sued.
Right.
And there was already like so much confusion. You know, is your podcast called Make Your Mark, or is it Make Your Mark Today, or is it the one and only? And so that happened, and it fueled this. All right, this is an opportunity for me to come up with a stronger idea.
Right.
Anyways, I was coming up with hundreds. I probably came up with thousands of ideas over a 4-month period. I'm like, what is it going to be? What's going to be this website that I really want to be the overall brand, which will be home of the one and only podcast, and anything else that I do, that'll be kind of the one-stop shop. Like, I've always wanted to create this like one-stop resource for authenticity, with authentic shares of vulnerability, with exercises that people can practice, questions people can ask themselves to support themselves. And I'm like, what is that supposed to be called? And like, I really struggled with coming up with a name, which fast forwards to going to this jazz club 4 months after this issue first arose. And I go to this jazz club, and it is packed. They're just like absolutely full, and the music is so freaking good. I love to dance, and I'm just sitting there like on the side, tapping my foot, feeling it, like my body wants to really move and to start dancing. Yet there's no one on the dance floor. And I'm thinking to myself, like, am I not supposed to dance? Would like that obstruct people's view from the band? No one else is dancing. Maybe that's just not a thing tonight. And then I realize, I'm like, Mark, you're at a jazz club. Like, people dance. There is a dance floor. And I realized it's like, oh, this is just my fear. And like comparing myself to other people. Oh, if they're not doing it, I shouldn't do it either. And I'm like, oh, this goes against everything I stand for by not dancing. So I'm going to break through this fear. So I grab the girl's hand who I was with that night, and we go out onto the dance floor and start dancing our asses off. And within 30 seconds, the dance floor is full.
Everyone was just waiting for someone to be authentic, to not live in fear, all the things.
Yep, exactly. So I'm feeling on top of the world. Not only am I dancing, getting my groove on, but like I created the space for other people to be able to express themselves and, you know, get out of their heads and into their bodies. And I'm still feeling on top of the world 2 minutes later when, boom, light bulb goes off.
Of course.
Your website should be a question. I'm like, that's interesting. I'm like, oh, I love asking people the toughest questions that I can possibly ask them. Oftentimes I'll find myself in social situations asking someone a question, and that like kind of like knocks them over in a way where like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Like, oh, that was kind of like a, you know, you weren't just going to talk to me about the weather. Like, you know, you're asking me like, you know, how do you feel about something? So I'm like, oh, it needs to be a question. And I get home from Harvell's, this jazz club. I go right to GoDaddy and I type in areyoubeingrreal.com, and it's available. And I bought it on the spot, and the rest is history. So the reason why I shared that is, you know, it was a really magical moment. It was something I was really struggling with. And the decision to go to this jazz club and to break through a fear of mine. And I'm not the kind of guy that before that would just like be the first person on the dance floor. So this was like, it was a significant moment for me. So that synchronicity of having to be there, having to break through a fear, and to be able to tap into this channeling of this idea and now my brand and signature question, like, I'm like, thank you, universe.
That's beautiful. I love the whole flow of that story, and the fact that, you know, as you became vulnerable, as you faced your fears, as you then were on the other side of the reward, which is the joy and the elation that comes from doing so, then the inspiration just comes through. I mean, what a great, it's all in that story. I love it.
Yep. And I've been rewarded time and time again from acts of vulnerability. This summer, I had some people who encouraged me to do a Facebook Live where I interviewed myself. It was something that I resisted. I did that. It spawned me to revive my workshop, which I had put on the shelf, which actually led into me creating that Winning Weeks program. So it's like, usually it's just the gift that keeps on giving when you're vulnerable and get out of your comfort zone. The third quick synchronistic thing that I want to share is we met at a beach party about a month and a half ago. which created this moment that's happening right here. And I have no idea what synchronistic moments are going to now happen as a result of this conversation, whether it's in our friendship, whether it's some kind of ripple effect that's going to happen in your life, who's ever listening right now, whether with either Brandon or me or with somebody else in your life, or an action that you decide to take. So I'm just going to throw that out there, because who knows what magic could be being created here in this moment.
Absolutely. And I would say the fact that you even say that, and I love the way you're doing that and playing with reality in a sense, like just by throwing that out there, I have no doubt that something really special will develop in some way, shape, or form, because now there's this energy given to it. You're giving energy to it. I'm giving energy to it. The listeners are giving energy to it. And I guess we'll all just have to wait and see how what goodness it leads to, right?
Hopefully some serious featherbed magic goodness.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, this has been so good, Mark. I really, really am glad I went to that beach party and I was able to meet you and connect. And I look forward to being your neighbor in the coming months or year or so. And that certainly will make it ripe for some beautiful collaboration and synchronicity. I do have one last question I would like to... Well, first off, before I get to my last question, best way for people to connect with you through your website, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say the easiest way to connect with me is through my Instagram, @AreYouBeingReal. It's spelled out. I put out some really awesome content on my Instagram on the daily, inspiring quotes and sound bites and videos. That Giving Confessions campaign, I share those videos on Instagram. So I'd say that's a good place to start, but also on areyoubeingrreal.com. That's where the podcast lives. I've got a daily email series that's free that you can sign up for. That's where you can learn about winning weeks. So, whatever floats your boat, whatever interests you or not.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm sure, I have absolutely no doubt that there will be people who will want to connect with you, Mark. You're fascinating to talk to and such an inspiration. Last question for you.
Bring it.
60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Mark Shapiro?
The meaning of life is to be yourself, to live authentically, to have the courage to reflect and to look within, even at the places you don't want to look at. And then to have the courage to live your truth, to be who you are, to be confident, to be in contribution to others, to support others. So together we can create the beautiful world, a beautiful, peaceful world where we all thrive, excel, and live harmoniously together.
Beautiful. Mark, thank you so much, my friend. I very much look forward to the next time our paths cross. Until then, journey well.
Sounds good, Brandon. I want to have you on the one and only, so we got to book that.
I can't wait. I definitely will look very much look forward to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Brandon. For everybody listening, just thank you for tuning in. I hope this inspired or impacted you or evoked something within you. And I would love to hear from you. So let's connect.
Yeah, I most certainly did. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes, since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting. Your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.